Over 200 experts have shared their secrets to a successful business. Join me, Rose Davidson, as I discover how these experts took their businesses to the next level.
Talking with the experts.
Welcome to Talking with the Experts. Talking about all things business by business owners for business owners. Episode 250 with Mark Grant.
Right now, they'd be getting the credit card bill and they'd be thinking, oh my goodness, how am I going to pay that bill and not incur 18, 19% that they would if they don't clear the bill in full? So, I'm going to mention a fair bit of data this afternoon, transactions, and probably the other thing that people are making over 6 million transactions through EFTPOS terminals at the moment. So there's about 760,000 terminals across the country. So if you are in a business, the thing that I would be suggesting that you do is, if you have not had regular contact with your bank, you make a point of doing so. Because with my background, coming from that background, I know for a fact the banks are not as proactive as they should be in going to their clients and saying, hey, Rose, you've had an EFTPOS terminal with us at the ANZ for the last 4 years. You're currently on 2.8%. We really value your business. We'd like to give you 1.9.
Talking with the experts.
Hello and welcome to Talking with the Experts. My name's Rose Davidson, your host. I'm from rosedavidson.com. And Talking with the Experts is about all things business by business owners for business owners. And you can find it on all good podcasting streaming platforms and on YouTube. And today it's my very great pleasure to introduce you to Mark Grant. And Mark was working for one of the big four banks for about 20 years. And he decided that it just wasn't for him anymore. And he decided that he wanted to do something a little bit different. With the introduction of Surcharge Laws in Australia in September of 2017, Mark has developed a suite of payment solutions such as EFTPOS terminals, direct debiting, online payment gateways, and Xero Payment Integration, which can be provided to businesses, clubs, and associations with no fees to the entity. There is no time like the present to reduce the issue of reducing profits and rising business costs. Welcome, Mark, and thank you so much for joining me. And we're going to be discussing, cashless payments, cashless economy for businesses and clubs and associations. So it's very timely that you've actually come on with what's happening in the world at the moment.
Yeah. Thanks, Rose. Great to be with you, and great to be with all your listeners and viewers across the great world of ours.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about why you decided that you wanted to not work for one of the big four anymore and branch out on your own.
Yeah, the problem was, I'm just going to make a stipulation now for any listeners that we may have outside Australia. This may not make a lot of sense to them, but when I was working for a major four bank for that length of time, you suddenly become a little bit of a, let me say, a mouse on a wheel. And what I mean by that, all you're doing is peddling the wheel to keep feeding the bank's profit. Okay? So I eventually woke up one day and thought, no, I can't do this anymore. I've got a conscience. I love helping people and offering them something that is unique. So, it was a big decision to leave an employer of over 20 odd years, especially when you've got a regular fortnightly income coming in. So it was a real decision to make, and something that took a little while to get over. But as they say, I left thinking that I'd have a few months to, regenerate myself. But here in Australia, there is no such thing as age discrimination laws. What I mean by that, I had over 140 job interviews here on the Gold Coast where I live with no, I applied for 140 with no interviews. So
yeah, I can
as they
so totally relate to that. I mean, I was in my I had just turned 40, and I applied for, I think I kept all the applications. There was like 400 and something, and I think out of the 400 I got about 5 interviews, because as soon as they knew that I'd been in the industry for such a long time, they wanted young girls with short skirts, and that's the truth of it. They don't want us old in the tooth, because and which is really silly, because we have more knowledge than the girls in the short skirts, but they want to train them and brainwash them, so they can't do that with us.
yeah, so true. So it's very common even now. I sort of read something in the paper today, a business looking for an 18-year-old with 2.5 years experience.
Oh yeah, come on, please. Yeah.
Yeah.
I even applied for a job. Someone wanted them to do ironing, right? But they had to be young, and they had to have like 2 years experience doing ironing. Now, please, honestly, ridiculous.
Yeah. So as they say, when you can't find a job, you've got to make it. So as you alluded to earlier, with surcharge laws being introduced here in Australia in 2017, I thought to myself, okay, there is a way, I believe, that I can marry surcharge laws with payment solutions. So obviously dealing with payment solutions for over 20 years, but it was something that was quite familiar to me. What wasn't familiar to me is how to marry and the confines of the surcharge laws. And this afternoon we could probably talk for 2 or 3 hours just on surcharge laws here in Australia, but I don't want to put people to sleep. So let me tell you, it's a rather complex law here in Australia. It's even a law now, even to today, where I firmly do believe there are a lot of business owners out there in our beautiful country that are flouting the laws. They're not flouting them deliberately. They're flouting them because they don't understand.
Most of the laws here are so confusing. I mean, I know the taxation. Well, I used to work for Australian Customs years ago, and we obviously had to monitor taxation law, and they were each volume was about this thick, and there was like 14 volumes or something, and we had to be across all of it. And if you wanted to research something, my God, it was like impossible.
Yeah, no. So this afternoon, I'll talk a little bit about what some businesses may be doing in that space, and give the listeners some advice. But really today, what I'm hoping to obtain from today's podcast is that people are a little bit more insightful into how these laws can interact with their business, what they must do to actually comply with the law. Because as an example, there's a restaurant here on the Gold Coast, 4 weeks ago now, they were reported for flouting the law, not charging the correct surcharge. A representative of the ACCC walked straight into their restaurant with a bill for $98,000, no questions asked. So today I'm going to try and give some clarity around how people can avoid fines of that nature.
Now, are the laws uniform in each, nationwide?
Yeah, it is. It is. I might as well just talk about it very quickly now. I'm going to give you a very abridged version of the law. So when the laws came in 2017, the law basically states that if you are accepting a card payment from a client, whether it be in person, over the phone, or online, that you can now pass on to that cardholder the cost of doing business for that transaction. Okay. So that's where the confusion enters the mind, cost of the transaction. Because if you talk to someone who may have as an example, a Commonwealth Bank EFTPOS terminal for a MasterCard transaction, they could be looking at 2%, someone who's got a NAB terminal, they could be looking at 1.85%. So it varies depending on volumes going through, the nature of the business and so forth. But I'll talk more about that later. But I just wanted to start off with just firstly some data that is hot off the press. And this is, I hope this gives some context to what we're going to be talking about. So in November 2021, only 2 months ago, there was $25.7 billion of credit card transactions transacted in our country. Now, that is the highest volume of credit card transactions in over 19 years. Why? I believe that people have said, hey, I'm sick and tired of COVID. I'm going to go on a splurge. I'm going to go and spend.
And because it's close to Christmas too, because...
Yeah, absolutely. In November, that's what we're doing. We've got Christmas in our mind. For those listeners who use debit cards, and there's a lot of us out there, this will blow you away as well as it did with me. $43.1 billion was spent on debit cards here in Australia during the month of November 2021.
That's incredible.
That is absolutely mind-blowing.
And they reckon there's no money here. Honestly, there's got to be.
Well,
because with debit cards, you can't just, you've got to have the funds in the bank before you can use your debit card. So there has to be money.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, now people, I think why the discrepancy between spending on credit card as to debit card, I think a lot of people during that part leading into Christmas were concerned about, okay, COVID, how long am I going to be out of my job for? I'm still going to have to pay my rent payments, my home loan payments. I'm just going to use my money I've got so I can keep closer, let me say, capture of those funds rather than just, putting on credit. And suddenly, right now, they'd be getting the credit card bill and they'd be thinking, oh my goodness, how am I going to pay that bill and not incur 18, 19% that they would if they don't clear the bill in full? So, I'm going to mention a fair bit of data this afternoon, transactions, and probably the other thing that people are making over 6 million transactions through EFTPOS terminals at the moment. So there's about 760,000 terminals across the country. So if you are in a business, the thing that I would be suggesting that you do is, if you have not had regular contact with your bank, you make a point of doing so. Because with my background, coming from that background, I know for a fact the banks are not as proactive as they should be in going to their clients and saying, hey, Rose, you've had an EFTPOS terminal with us at the ANZ for the last 4 years. You're currently on 2.8%. We really value your business. We'd like to give you 1.9. So when you're thinking about a 0.9% difference on what the bank is charging you for the transactions you're processing on their behalf, that's quite substantial and can lead to a substantial amount of money going back into your pocket at the end of the year. So, and that's what I find day in, day out, is that people are starting to, their margins are being shrinked continually. And, people are thinking, well, what can I do to remain profitable? Because at the end of the day, I'm in business to make a profit, not to make a loss. So it's pretty, but when we talk about cashless society, it's been reported in the press that by 2024, that they are expecting that we will be cashless here in Australia. Now, it depends on who you talk to, and everyone's opinion is different. Here on the Gold Coast, I won't mention for what reasons, but I believe here on the Gold Coast, there will always be cash in our economy. And yeah, I'll leave that. I'll leave that there. I'll
I
park
think
that.
so, though, with the tourism, though, not everyone would have a card and they would be bringing cash or have access to cash where, and they started the cashless thing with the unemployment benefits, and they're trying to bring that in so people aren't using cash. I don't believe in it myself. I think it's wrong that you take away that ability from people to manage their own money, but that's the government for you.
Oh, absolutely, and it's that case too. Where with the the facts and figures I've studied and what I've seen and what I've heard, I do a lot of reading about our economy and so forth. And look, the way we're going, it's pretty much that. And the classic example is that here on the Gold Coast, I went past a busker only yesterday, and the busker had his own EFTPOS terminal beside where he was playing his guitar. So he is obviously thinking that way. But if we go cashless, where I think the industries are going to be disadvantaged, one of them is charities. Because a lot of charities accept cash donations. Like for instance, I've come across a charity only in the last 2 months that for every $10 that is donated to it, its bank charges it 22 cents minimum per $10 spent. So in my eyes, if you've got a charity, they're a not-for-profit, and their bankers should be looking at providing that charity with a more cost-effective means of accepting cash donations.
I sort of expect so. That's a lot.
Substantial.
It's ridiculous.
Absolutely, 22 cents for every $10 donated. So
it's like a quarter of their money nearly is gone. Like the quarter of $10 is gone. It's
22 cents per $10 spent.
Yeah, that's ridiculous though, isn't it?
So, yeah, and this particular charity is one of the largest in Australia too. And you think, millions of dollars per year that they're getting donated to them. So you can just imagine what that's doing to top up the coffers of one of the large four banks.
Well, that gets does away with money tins sitting on countertops, and the coin janglers that are in the malls and shopping centres.
Absolutely, and it's also the case too that when I talk about a cashless society, you only have to look at the increase in the likes of Afterpay. People starting to look at those Afterpay as a way of funding their purchases. So that Afterpay is another form of a cashless society.
Or Zip Pay.
Exactly.
I love them both. I think they're great.
They've got their places in the market as long as you fulfill the requirements. But when I'm also talking about a cashless society, I personally have seen for myself a restaurant based in Brisbane that has a sign, probably 3 foot by 2 foot on their front door. Cash payments refused at this establishment.
I know a lot during COVID have refused cash payments because of the risk of handling money that that someone with COVID's handled, and they only do, well, they don't say banned, they just say card payments preferred.
Yeah, exactly right. So I'm never going to tell someone how to run their business. That's not who I am. But consequently, if I was someone who had $2,000 of cash in my wallet and I was taking 4 business friends for lunch, is that restaurant really in a position to refuse to accept a $2,000 payment for me for lunch?
Not really.
No, especially the way the markets margins are, and also how uncertain we are in our marketplace now. But talking about cash too, this is something that some more data just to put things into context, is that cash payments equated for 70% of all our spending in 2007. That 70% fell to 27% in 2016, some 9 years later. So from there, you can see that there's a real adjustment to people starting to use cards. Now, people are probably listening to this podcast and thinking, okay, there's how can I, make my business, my club, my association ready for this new economy? Let's call it a new economy, because, no cash in it, it's going to be a little bit unusual. So what I say to people is, like I said earlier, is that if you have a bank that you have not heard from in 12 months, please make a point of contacting them and arranging for them to review whatever payment arrangements you have with them. If you are leaving a message for them, whether by phone or by email, you're not having a response inside 24 hours, well, that's when I think you need to talk to me.
Mhm.
Because what I will then do is, I guarantee I return all my phone calls and all my emails in the same day. But I've also got that knowledge that I understand what payment solutions could work best for you. So as we alluded to earlier on, I have 4 solutions that I've designed. My EFTPOS terminal first up. A couple of benefits of it is that I have a lot of people come to me and they say to me, Mark, I don't feel comfortable in charging my client a surcharge per transaction. And if that was you, Rose, I'd say, right, Rose, that's your opinion. I respect that. Let's leave that there. I have the ability still to provide you with a terminal, but where the costs are actually directed to you in your business as opposed to being passed on. So when we have a discussion, they're the sort of the 2 questions we talk about. One other thing that's very, very important when we're talking about EFTPOS terminals, and as I mentioned earlier, I'm here on the Gold Coast. We are the 6th largest city in the country. However, I have people here coming to me even as late as earlier today saying, Mark, I've got an EFTPOS terminal with a bank and I'm having 6 or 7 outages per day. Can't get reception, can't take payments. So my terminal actually gives you that peace of mind because it has a roaming SIM card built into it. So that ensures that it will continue to function directly on the signal up in our atmosphere on whatever should be its strongest. And I've had some businesses in Kalgoorlie in Western Australia who've come to me specifically for that feature. And they luckily, fingers crossed, haven't had any outages since I've had my terminal. So my EFTPOS terminal can function that way. It can also accept, the Moto payments, pay watch payments, ring payments, all the technology. So, yeah. I want to, just for a moment, I alluded earlier on to businesses needing to be aware of the surcharge laws. And I also talked about that restaurant here on the Gold Coast with a fairly hefty fine. I want to just take a few moments just to explain a little bit about you. If you have an EFTPOS terminal with any bank, the surcharge laws state that you can pass on your own private surcharge to every card holder. The only problem that you face is knowing how do you need to comply with the law? What rate do I need to charge? So I'm going to just touch on a real life example. Pardon me. So in October last year, I walked into an independent hardware store on the southern suburbs of Brisbane. As I was about to walk into that hardware store, there's a sign stating every credit card transaction will incur a 3% charge. Me being in the business I'm in, I'm thinking, nah, this is a business that's not, not so much flouting the law. I don't want to use that word. In my own mind, I had this as a business that didn't understand how to comply with the law. In talking to the business owner, that's exactly what was the case. So as an example, this particular business owner had his terminal with the National Bank. So the National Bank was charging him on EFTPOS transactions, 60 cents per EFTPOS, MasterCard and Visa, 2.8%, and Amex, 3%. So this business owner naturally assumed that he could charge everyone 3%. The law states that you can only pass on the lowest cost denominator. So in that example, if that business owner wanted to pass on his own private surcharge, he could pass on 60 cents to everyone using a card. But if he did that, his profit would be reducing very quickly because his bank would still be charging him 2.8% for anyone paying by MasterCard and Visa and 3% for Amex. So in sitting down with this particular business owner and explaining that my terminal passes on a surcharge based on the card being used for payment. So it can identify what sort of card is being used and passes on a relative surcharge based on that. That example I spoke of, I've had in the last 6 weeks, probably over 180 different businesses around Australia come to me with that issue, with that problem, not certain what they can pass on. I'm here to answer that question for anyone who may be on this podcast this afternoon. Because what's important to me is not so much you having one of my terminals, but me ensuring that you're fully compliant with the surcharge laws and that you understand them. Because in business now, you've got that much to consider. So I would just hope I can pass on. So that's a little bit about the EFTPOS terminals, one of the 4 products I've designed. I've also designed a recurring payment solution, direct debiting solution, lay-by solution, whatever you want to call it. When I was designing these solutions some 3 years ago, what was important to me is I could see a revolution in how we were about to do business. I could foresee us breaking down the barriers that we were going to be meeting at coffee shops. We're going to be meeting at someone's business premises. We may be meeting with them at their dining room table. So what was important to me in designing my payment solutions is I had payment solutions which were not only easy to use, time saving, but also substantially cost saving as well. So with my direct debiting solution, one of the features of it I'm very, very happy with and very proud of is that no matter what you take to a business meeting, whether it be your tablet, iPad, laptop, if you have a client who's wanting to do business with you and take advantage of a package that you may offer, that my solution, you can actually sign the client up on your device while you're with them. There is nothing worse than actually going back to your office, sending that client an email and saying, hey, Mark, here's a copy of what we've just talked about. Can you please, sign this direct debiting agreement and send it back to me? In the interim, I've gone cold. I don't want to do business anymore. So that particular solution, you've also got the benefit of me sending you an email very, very early in the morning, letting you know who paid you last night, so it helps you with your cash flow. Also on who doesn't actually pay you as well. Thirdly, we'll come to accepting online payments. So there are a lot of people out there using the PayPals and Stripes of the world. A lot of people using Shopify. If you're using Shopify, I'm unable to provide the features that Shopify does, i.e. the warehousing factor, letting you know how many widgets you've got left after you've sold 500. But my pricing is substantially less than what PayPal and Stripe provide. Lastly is with my Xero Payment solution. So I know that a lot of people are out there using Xero accounting software, and a lot of people are not putting on that particular invoice when they email it out to their client payment terms or how to be paid. So that's with my solution I provide a Pay Now tab up in the top left-hand corner. So when you email that invoice out, it gives the client the ability to click the Pay Now tab and gives the client 4 different options on how to pay you. From a credit card, BPay, from a bank account, or I'm just thinking, sorry, I'm just tongue-tied at the moment.
All right, you'll think of it.
Yeah. So it gives you that peace of mind. With that feature that I've created on that Xero invoice for a business, I had a business here on the Gold Coast that came to me only yesterday and said, Mark, we have increased our cash flow by over 90% as a result of using that solution of yours. So that's the benefit of it.
Oh, I might have to come to you and get both of them.
Yeah, so they're sort of solutions I've created to try and help in this evolution that we're going through. And, with the facts and figures I've mentioned to you this afternoon, we're certainly heading that way. So we may only be a small country, but we're punching well above our weight in the non-cash transactions in our economy.
Oh, that's very interesting, Mark. Thank you so much for sharing those innovations with us, because
pleasure, Rose.
I think that businesses will think twice maybe about going to a bank and
Yeah, it is. The other thing that the businesses, it's a good point you make, is because probably ever since the dawn of time, if a business wanted an EFTPOS terminal as an example, they would go straight to their bank, no questions asked. But in the deregulated economy that we now operate within, it has given myself, licensing to be able to operate in this marketplace. And, why would you go to a bank who may charge you, in 1 year, $15,000 to $20,000 for the privilege of providing you with a payment solution, where I can do the same thing, if not with the same technology, probably more technology, for no cost, if the business is happy to pass on the transactional surcharge. Plus, the other thing too is, what business owner has the time to go to the bank and spend an hour or 2 out of their business to sit there? So, it's a case now where I believe, and that's where, it's like, the classic example. I had someone who came to me last week and said, Mark, I'm working incredible hours. The only time I've got to meet with you is Sunday afternoon at 3 o'clock. I said, well, what's the issue with that? I said, if that's what suits you, that's what suits me. So it's about me being in business, being flexible and meeting other business owners' needs.
Well, that's bloody brilliant, I reckon. Mark, I don't suppose you've actually written a book about any of this stuff?
Not as yet, Rose. It's funny you mention that. I've had a lot of people come to me and doing that. I have started penciling something, but it's
work in progress.
It is WIP, yes.
Yes. All right, Mark, where can people find you if they want to work with you?
Yeah, Rose, my website is Cashless, so COSTLESS, payment, PAYMENT, solutions, SOLUTIONS.com. You'll be able to find my website there. I have a Google My Business page. My mobile number is 0419 762 478.
Are you licensed only to work in Australia, or can you offer these services to overseas clients?
Thank you for a great question. I can provide my EFTPOS terminal and my direct debiting solution to businesses operating out of Australia. However, the proceeds from both those payment solutions must go into an Australian domiciled bank account.
For those that are overseas, then the The precursor to the mobile number is +61, and
61, yeah.
Mark's mobile number and minus the 0.
That's right. And then the last way of contacting me is obviously by email, which is mark, M-A-R-K, .grant, G-R-A-N-T, at costlesspaymentsolutions.com.
Perfect.
I'm
Any
also
final
on-
words? Any final? Oh, sorry. I know you're on LinkedIn and all those other great
LinkedIn,
places, and
Facebook,
and
well,
all of those. That's
probably
how
the
we.
other thing I'd like to mention, I'd just like to just once again impart a little bit of my knowledge. And I know we've talked about payment solutions this afternoon. If you're in Australia and you have either a home loan, investment property loan, or commercial loan, and you have not heard from your bank inside 12 months, I strongly recommend that you make contact with them, because there would be every likelihood, pardon me, that they could look at a reduction in your rates. So there is another way of you saving money and trying to ease the constraints of the family budget, which is quite
Telstra
hard.
the same. Many of the utilities, if you ring them, they will talk to you about reduction in whatever it is, but they won't offer it. Most usually, most times they won't offer. You have to ring up and make contact.
And probably the other last, probably my closing word would be, it costs nothing to talk to me. So even if someone on the call, is using their own private surcharge and they're a little bit scared by what I mentioned, I'm only too happy to spend some time to guide them the right way on what they should be doing.
Perfect, Mark. Thank you so much for your time today and for that really enlightening conversation about money and cashless societies. It's been, it's been a pleasure.
No, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity, Rose, to spend time with you.
Okay, bye for now.
Okay, thanks, Rose.
Talking with the experts.